We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. Both Israel and Hezbollah defied de-escalation calls, trading heavy fire. Top Hezbollah military commander killed in Beirut strike. UN Security Council to hold an emergency meeting on Lebanon. Tension soars in Asia as China launches an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. The rare trial run carried a dummy warhead. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces no confidence motion in Parliament, first major test of his unpopular minority government. Voting begins in India's Jammu Kashmir for Phase 2 polls. Over 2.5 million voters to decide fate of 239 candidates in 26 assembly constituencies. World markets rally again as China announces another interest rate cut, cuts medium-term lending facility a day after slashing short-term interest rates and rates on existing mortgages. And in sports, Indian duo of Jeevan Nedunchandyan and Vijay Sundar Prashant clinched the Hangzhou Open 2024 title after beating Germany in the men's double final in China. Well, after nearly a year of conflict against Hamas in Gaza, Israel is shifting its focus to the northern frontier, from where Iran-backed Hezbollah continues to fire rockets into Israel in support of Hamas. Israeli air defense systems also intercepted a missile detected crossing from Lebanon Wednesday morning. Here's a detailed report.
An Israeli airstrike on Beirut killed a senior Hezbollah commander on Tuesday as cross-border rocket attacks by both sides increased fears of a full-fledged war in the West Asia. Israel's Air Force conducted extensive strikes on Hezbollah targets across southern Lebanon, including weapon storage facilities and dozens of launchers that were aimed at Israeli territory. A senior figure in terrorist group Hezbollah, who headed its missile and rocket force, was also killed. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant claimed the attacks had weakened Hezbollah and would continue. Fearing escalation, Britain urged its nationals to leave Lebanon and said it was moving 700 troops to Cyprus to help its citizens in evacuation. Etihad Airways, Gulf Airlines and Fly Dubai also joined a number of international carriers in suspending flights to Beirut. Germany's Lufthansa had already suspended Beirut flights. US President Joe Biden also made a plea for calm in his last UNGA speech as a president.
We're also working to bring greater measure of peace and stability to the Middle East. The world must not flinch from the horrors of October 7th. Any country would have the right and responsibility to ensure that such an attack can never happen again.
Though Lebanon's Foreign Minister Abdullah Bo Habib criticized Biden's address as not strong and not promising by saying that the US was the only country that can make a difference in the Middle East with regard to Lebanon. The US and fellow mediators Qatar and Egypt have so far been unsuccessful in their efforts to negotiate a ceasefire in nearly year-old conflict in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. Meanwhile, UN Security Council is meeting on Wednesday to discuss the ongoing conflict in Lebanon. The new offensive has stoked fears that nearly a year of conflict between Israel and the terrorist Palestinian group Hamas in Gaza is escalating and could destabilize the entire region. Bureau Report, DD India.
And in his last speech as president before the General Assembly, Joe Biden called on nations to band together amid the spiraling conflict in the West Asia. Biden declared in his final address to the UN General Assembly that the US must not retreat from the world as Israel and Hezbollah militants in Lebanon edged towards all-out war and Israel's operation against Hamas in Gaza near the one-year mark. Biden also stressed the need to end the West Asia conflict and the civil war in Sudan and highlighted US and Western allies' support for Kyiv.
I know I know many look at the world today and see difficulties and react with despair, but I do not. I won't. As leaders, we don't have the luxury. I recognize the challenges from Ukraine to Gaza to Sudan and beyond. War, hunger, terrorism, brutality, record displacement of people, a climate crisis, democracy at risk, strains within our societies, the promise of artificial intelligence and its significant risk. The list goes on. But maybe because all I've seen and all we have done together over the decades, I have hope. I know there is a way forward.
And Poland's President Andrzej Duda urged Russia to end the conflict with Ukraine at the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday. Duda said the conflict destabilizes the region and poses a direct threat to the global order and security.
Today we are facing, yet again, an extremely serious threat to global security. For the past 2.5 years, we have seen Russia's brutal aggression against neighboring Ukraine. This is a flagrant violation of fundamental norms of international law, such as the prohibition of the use of force in international relations. This unprovoked aggression is destabilizing the region and posing a direct threat to the global order and security. We cannot allow this war to turn into another frozen conflict.
Well, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni urged the United Nations to fight illegal human trafficking and criminal organizations at the General Assembly on Tuesday.
I problemi del cosiddetto Sud globale.
Our objective before tens of thousands of people who face desperate journeys to enter Europe illegally is to first guarantee their rights, to not have to emigrate and to not have to cut their ties with their homeland simply because they have no other choice. It's a desperation on which the reckless criminal organizations that are more and more powerful and ratified profit. I proposed a year ago from this podium to declare a global war against human traffickers, and I'm happy to see that the appeal did not fall on deaf ears.
Completamente nuovo.
Also, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres denounced a growing number of governments and other groups who feel they are entitled to get out of jail free card on Tuesday.
Excellencies, the level of impunity in the world is politically indefensible and morally intolerable. Today, a growing number of governments and others feel entitled to get out of jail free card. They can trample international law. They can violate the United Nations Charter. They can turn a blind eye to international human rights conventions or the decisions of international courts. They can thumb their nose at international humanitarian law. They can invade another country, lay waste to whole societies, or utterly disregard the welfare of their own people. And nothing will happen.
Well, the UN Security Council held a meeting for a high-level briefing on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Addressing the council members, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that peace in Ukraine cannot be achieved through negotiations alone. Russia must be forced into it. Zelensky emphasized that the conflict will not end because someone grows weary or through any deal with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Instead, he urged Western nations to back his victory plan, a strategy he claims could break Moscow's resolve, even having a psychological impact on Putin.
Putin has broken so many international norms and rules that he won't stop on his own. Russia can only be forced into peace. And that is exactly what's needed. This war can't be calmed by talks. Action is needed.
Zelensky also condemned North Korea and Iran, labeling them as de facto accomplices for supplying arms to Russia.
Russia has no legitimate reason, none at all, for making Iran and North Korea de facto accomplices in its criminal war in Europe, with their weapons, killing us, killing Ukrainians, and helping Putin steal our land from our people.
Meanwhile, Russian forces have begun storming the eastern Ukrainian town of Vuhledar, a stronghold that has resisted Russian attacks since the beginning of the 2022 war. Russia's defense ministry said its forces had defeated Ukrainian units at a series of settlements, including Vuhledar, which Russians call Ugledar, and that the eastern grouping of Russian forces had improved their tactical positions. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported on Tuesday that Russian troops had launched 8 attacks around Vuhledar and 2 nearby villages. While Russia struck a high-rise apartment block and a bakery in Kyiv, northeastern Ukraine, killing at least 3 and injuring 34. Guided bombs tore through the 9-story building, leaving multiple floors in ruins, with people feared trapped beneath the rubble. The brutal attack also extended south to Zaporizhia, where Russian forces launched another strike, injuring 7 people. The surge in violence comes as world leaders, including President Zelensky, convene in New York for the UN General Assembly, underscoring the war's relentless toll. And China publicly acknowledged for the first time that it successfully launched an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean on Wednesday, in a move likely to raise international concerns about the country's nuclear build-up. Chinese Defense Ministry in a statement said that the intercontinental ballistic missile carrying a dummy warhead was launched by the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force at 8:44 a.m. Beijing time on Wednesday and fell into expected sea areas. The statement further reads, the launch was a routine arrangement in our annual training plan and not directed at any country or target. Despite reaffirming its no first-use nuclear policy, the test signals China's push to modernize its nuclear forces in response to U.S. missile defenses and rising regional tensions. While China insists the test was not directed at any specific country, the move is likely to heighten global concerns over its growing nuclear arsenal. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Sri Lanka's newly elected President Anurakkumara Dissanayake dissolves Parliament, calls snap polls on November 14th. Jens Stoltenberg to step down as NATO chief after 10 years, to be replaced by former Dutch PM Rutte. Tropical storm Helene approaches Cuba and is on track to hit Florida's major hurricane as it declares emergency.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on, Sri Lanka will witness snap elections on 14th of November this year after President Anurakkumara Dissanayake dissolved the parliament late Tuesday night. A gazette notification was issued on the dissolution and calling elections. Nominations will be received from 4th to 11th of October. Dissanayake was elected as the president of Sri Lanka in a close 3-cornered fight. His alliance National People's Power has only 3 members in the current legislature, 2 of whom are part of his cabinet, including Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. And after rejecting his Democratic rival Kamala Harris' offer of second debate, the former U.S. President and Republican candidate Donald Trump is declaring a spree of new sops to win the hearts of American youth, vowing to make America a manufacturing hub for the world, a place that has already been occupied by China for more than over 3 decades. As a report by DD India's Akhilesh Suman, how Trump is trying to use the odds in his favor.
With presidential elections just a month and a quarter away, former US President and Republican nominee Donald Trump is trying hard to compensate for the debacle he faced in widely televised debate with his Democratic rival and US Vice President Kamala Harris. Trump is trying to woo the American business leaders and the youth alike. Speaking at a rally in Georgia, he pledged to save jobs as well as deliver new openings.
And under my plan, American workers will no longer be worried about losing your jobs to foreign nations. Instead, foreign nations will be worried about losing, and we will take in hundreds of billions of dollars into our treasury and use that money to benefit the American citizens, and it will not cause inflation, by the way.
In Georgia, which is a crucial swing state, Trump even outlined his plans for businesses by offering them tax rebates. He held a clear threat to those who are planning to move the manufacturing base out of the US. Increasingly, the lines between rivals like China and allies are becoming blur for the Republican nominee.
I want German car companies to become American car companies. I want them to build their plants here. I want to beat China in electronics production, and we'll be able to do that easily. We have the greatest genius, the greatest minds here, and then we end up building them in different places. A lot of that's really stupid tax policy. I want GE, IBM, and every other manufacturer that left us to be filled with regret and come sprinting back to our shores, and they will.
Amidst applause of his supporters, Trump said that he will offer companies heavy incentives for manufacturing in the US if he becomes the president. However, he cautioned them that if they don't oblige, they will lose the incentives.
So as your president, here is the deal that I will be offering to every major company and manufacturer on earth. I will give you the lowest taxes, the lowest energy costs, the lowest regulatory burden, and free access to the best and biggest market on the planet, but only if you make your product here in America. It all goes away if you don't make your product here.
Trump held Vice President Kamala Harris responsible for the job losses incurred by the Americans by allowing illegal immigrants into the country. This is a plank that he has raised again and again during the campaigning before the American voters. Though Kamala Harris has also declared many incentives to American citizens, it will be interesting to see who makes the last impression on the voters, especially the youth. Akhilesh Suman's report for DD India.
Well, the U.S. Department of Justice has filed an antitrust lawsuit against Visa, accusing the company of illegally maintaining a monopoly over the U.S. debit card market. The lawsuit, following a 3-year investigation, claims Visa's practices have cost American consumers and businesses billions in excessive fees while stifling innovation in the payment industry. Visa allegedly enforces exclusionary agreements with merchants and banks, penalizing those who use alternative payments networks. The suit also accuses Visa of partnering with tech companies to neutralize competition and imposing restrictions that limit rivals' market access. Visa, which earns $8 billion annually in U.S. debit fees, denies the allegations. General Counsel Julie Rottenberg called the claims meritless, arguing the debit card market is highly competitive. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces a no-confidence motion in the Parliament, introducing by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Trudeau's main rival in Canada's Parliament on Tuesday introduced a motion of no confidence in the ruling Liberals in a first major test of his unpopular minority government. Following a debate in the House of Commons, a vote on the long-shot Conservative motion is scheduled on Wednesday. The motion follows the New Democratic Party's exit from a coalition with the Liberals. The confidence vote will be his first real test since the smaller New Democratic Party this month tore up a 2022 deal to keep the Liberals in office until an election that must be held by end of October 2025. Trudeau will have to survive a series of other confidence votes to make it that far. And Canada is considering to follow the United States in banning the sale of connected vehicles incorporating Chinese technology. Expressing about security concerns, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland said Canada also has real security concerns about the technology on Tuesday. Earlier this month, Freeland also signaled that Ottawa would likely impose further tariffs on Chinese batteries, tech products and critical minerals. Canada in August slapped 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports, matching US measures. Meanwhile, China has slammed the measures as unfair and referred them to the World Trade Organization. And Jens Stoltenberg will step down after 10 years as NATO Secretary General in October and will be replaced by former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. Stoltenberg held his final NATO summit as chief on July 9th last year. NATO decided to extend Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg's contract by a further year, opting to stick with an experienced leader. Stoltenberg, a former Prime Minister of Norway, has been the Transatlantic Security Alliance's leader since 2014 and has guided the North Atlantic Treaty Organization through a series of crises since taking charge. His tenure had already been extended 3 previous times. And protesters in Mexico City continue to demand justice during a demonstration over the 43 missing students from the Ayotzinapa case. Mexico is preparing to mark the 10th anniversary of the tragedy on September 26th. 10 years later, it's still not clear where the students are. In 2014, 43 students disappeared from the southwestern city of Iguala, reportedly abducted by corrupt police working with the local drug cartel. So far, only 3 of the students have been positively identified. A decade later, families of the missing students are still seeking answers. And Venezuela's Attorney General Tariq Saab said he has requested Interpol to issue an arrest warrant for Argentine President Javier Milei, the latest in a diplomatic spat between the two countries. Early on Monday, Argentina's federal justice body requested the arrest of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro, citing human rights violations. The spat stems from the seizure of a Venezuela airplane in Buenos Aires in June 2022. Venezuela accused Milei of 7 crimes, including robbery. Meanwhile, former Spanish Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero said that he participated in negotiations which allowed Venezuela's leader of the opposition, Edmundo González, to flee and seek refuge in Spain. Zapatero said he will always help Venezuela regain hope through dialogue to find a peaceful solution. González flew to Spain on September 8 to seek asylum hours after quitting his country amid a political and diplomatic crisis over July's disputed election. And US President Joe Biden will make his long-awaited visit to Africa when he travels to Germany and Angola in mid-October. White House in a statement said that Biden's first stop will be Germany, where he will express appreciation to Germany for supporting Ukraine's defense against Russia, among other issues. While in Angola, October 13 to 15th, Biden will meet with President João Lourenço. The two leaders will discuss increased collaboration on shared priorities, including fostering economic partnership and enhancing peace and security. And some global weather updates now. Tropical storm Helene formed in the Caribbean as it moved across the Gulf of Mexico, approaching western Cuba with rain and possible flooding. Red flags are raised on the beaches of the popular Mexican tourist resort of Cancun as tropical storm threatens over the Caribbean. The U.S. state of Florida is preparing for the arrival of Storm Helene, due to make landfall later in the week as a powerful Category 3 hurricane. Helene is expected to unleash mudslides and flooding in Cuba before reaching major hurricane strength as it hits Florida with life-threatening ocean surge. Forecasters predict Helene will strengthen quickly over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico to become a major hurricane, packing winds as high as 115 mph. Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency in most Florida counties. People in some regions already faced mandatory evacuation orders on Tuesday ahead of expected coastal flooding. Alongside warnings across Florida, hurricane warning is in place for communities along the eastern part of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and a hurricane watch for Cuba's Pinar del Rio province. If the forecasts are confirmed, Helene would be the highest category hurricane to hit the United States in more than a year. Researchers say climate change likely plays a role in the rapid intensification of storms because sheets of rain began lashing western Cuba on Tuesday morning, prompting authorities to shut down schools, close ports and recall fishing boats. The storm's path also passes over the northeastern tip of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Climate scientists say annual hurricanes in the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico region have grown more frequent and severe due to global warming, and there is more energy in a warmer ocean for them to feed on. While the remnants of Tropical Storm John continue to whip western Mexico with strong winds and heavy rain on Tuesday, bringing a risk of flash flooding that was expected to persist for several more days. Stretching across several Mexican states, the storm uprooted trees and electrical posts and ripped off roofs as it made landfall on Monday, officials said. At least 2 people were killed by a landslide near Oaxaca, and the third death was reported in the mountainous area of Guerrero. The national head of emergency services said John could cause further intense rainfall over Guerrero, one of Mexico's poorest states. And a massive wildfire broke out in Ecuador's capital on Tuesday, putting citizens on alert for evacuations. Quito's mayor said the situation was critical and demanded citizens avoid moving so that firefighters could travel freely across the city. He added that brigades were deployed in 5 hotspots. According to the local media reports, the causes of the wildfire are still unknown. And addressing the world leaders at the UN General Assembly, UN Chief Antonio Guterres warned that the planet is on a trajectory to careen past the global limit of a 1.5-degree temperature rise.
We are in a climate meltdown. Extreme temperatures, raging fires, droughts, and epic floods are not natural disasters. They are human disasters, increasingly fueled by fossil fuels. No country is spared.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. A new exhibition exploring the vast network of the Silk Road trade routes opens at the British Museum in London this week, showcasing a range of artifacts, including Indian garnets found in Suffolk, England, to a small Buddha figurine retrieved in Sweden. Silk Roads focuses specifically on the period 8500 to 1000 amid the rise of empires and religions. The U.S. Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigation has released the footage of the Titan submersible salvage during the ongoing public hearing into how last year's catastrophe unfolded. The video showed a remotely operated vehicle attaching thick yellow ropes and equipment to what appears to be the end cap of the sunken vessel on June 26th last year. Swiss designer Kevin Germania, the king of recycling, also presented Les Desastrieux, a playful and colorful spring-summer 2025 collection during Paris Fashion Week. One of the outfits is unique in that it is made from the remains of the costume worn by the pianist at the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games. Also, Dior presented an athletic, modern and technological collection all in black and white at its Spring-Summer 2025 show in Paris. Mario Grazio's Dior collection took a sporty turn, blending athletic prowess with an urban menace on Tuesday. The Paris show's stripped-down designs evoked a 60s sci-fi aesthetic reminiscent of Star Trek, but with an edge, daring symmetrical shapes paired with knee-high boots that flirted with danger. World-renowned Ukrainian artist Vladimir Manzos created wartime murals on the walls of Kyiv. For over 2 weeks, Manzos tirelessly painted his new mural that is a tribute to the work done by Ukrainian Military Intelligence Service. Manzos' latest work is the 4th in the series of murals called Time for Change. And still to come, DD India News Hour. India's EAM emphasized that peace on the border is necessary for normalization of relations with China while interacting at Asia Society Policy Institute. India's Game Changer initiative Make in India completes 10 years, transforming country into a global manufacturing powerhouse. And IMD issues red alert rainfall warnings across many states in India.
to Jaipur.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. Both Israel and Hezbollah defy de-escalation calls, trading heavy fire. Top Hezbollah military commander killed in Beirut strike. UN Security Council to hold an emergency meeting on Lebanon. Tension soars in Asia as China launches an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. The rare trial run carried a dummy warhead. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces no confidence motion in Parliament, first major test of his unpopular minority government. Voting underway in India's Jammu Kashmir for Phase 2 polls. Over 2.5 million voters to decide fate of 239 candidates in 26 assembly constituencies. World markets rally again as China announces another interest rate cut, cuts medium-term lending facility a day after slashing short-term interest rates and rates on existing mortgages. And in sports, Indian duo of Jeevan Neduncheljian and Vijay Sundar Prashant clinched the Hangzhou Open 2024 title after beating Germany in the men's double final in China. And moving on, voting underway for the second phase of assembly polling in India's Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Polling is being held in 26 assembly constituencies spread across 6 districts of the Union Territory, including the summer capital, Srinagar, in which around 2.5 million voters are eligible. This phase is particularly significant as it will determine the fate of 239 candidates. A multi-tier security blanket has been thrown around each polling station to ensure the voting in an atmosphere free of fear. Booths are also guarded by CCTV camera to keep a nab on any untoward incident. Further, there are more than 150 special polling stations, including pink polling stations, stations manned by specially abled persons and youths, border polling stations, green polling stations, and unique polling stations. A selfie point has also been created at the booths to encourage voting. Besides, over 15,500 Kashmiri migrant voters are also expected to vote across special polling stations set up in Jammu, Udhampur, and Delhi. The voting for the second phase will conclude at 6 p.m. today. The Jammu and Kashmir Assembly election is being conducted in 3 phases, with voting for third and final phase scheduled for 1st of October. The first phase on September 18th witnessed impressive turnout of over 61%. The counting of votes will take place on the 8th of October. Assembly elections are being held for the first time in Jammu and Kashmir after the abrogation of Article 370. And DD India's Mudassir Amin joins us from J&K's Budgam on this. Well, Mudassir, how is the polling going on? The second phase polling has already started. How is it going?
Actually, polling is going so smoothly, and we are witnessing huge queues outside polling stations. I am here in Budgam, where Umar Abdullah is contesting. Umar Abdullah, you know, is former Chief Minister of J&K and Vice President of J&K National Conference. We are witnessing huge lines. People are actually coming out of their homes very early, and they are casting their votes eagerly.
All right, Mudassir, also more than 15,500 displaced Kashmiri Pandit voters from across the country are eligible to vote today at 24 specially made polling stations for them in the second phase. Can you tell us more about that?
Actually, there have been special polling stations made for these Kashmiri Pandits have been actually in different parts of our country. They are actually voting in different parts of the country, and special polling stations have been set for their convenience.
All right. Could you tell us about the special polling stations which have been made for the second phase specially?
Actually, many polling stations have been made specially for specially disabled, for old age, and we are seeing they have been stationed many from the district for assisting these voters in these polling stations. Like, we have specially disabled persons who are actually visiting these polling stations, and they have been assisted by the men and machinery so that they will be able to cast their vote.
All right, Mudassir, thank you so much for all those details from Budgam.
Thank you.
And moving on, electioneering also gaining momentum in North India's Haryana now. Top leaders of all parties are holding rallies and public meetings to garner support in favour of their party in the state. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address a public rally in Sonipat on Wednesday. Voting for the 90-member Legislative Assembly in Haryana will be held in a single phase on the 5th of October, while counting of the votes will be done on 8th of October. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that unless there is peace and tranquility on the border, there is no scope of normalization of relations with China. He was interacting with a select gathering in New York at Asia Society Policy Institute. During the interaction, while he elaborated with India's overall relations with the world, he specifically mentioned that bloody clash at border amidst COVID pandemic itself has overshadowed the relationship, and after a series of negotiations, only 75% of disengagement has taken place.
Until we are able to restore peace and tranquility on the border and ensure that the agreements which we have signed up to are adhered, it's obviously difficult to carry on with the rest of the relationship. So what has been the focus for the last 4 years is to, in the first instance, at least disengage the troops, which means that they go back to the camp, to the military bases from which they traditionally operate, because right now both sides have troops who are deployed forward. And when I said 75% of it has been sorted out, I was asked in a way to quantify it, to give a sense. It's only of the disengagement.
Well, India's External Affairs Minister also said that both countries need to take care the protocol of border patrols. That is not tricky part and part of daily routine that need attention.
And the main issue right now is the patrolling. How do we, both of us, I would say, patrol up to the line of actual control. And right now the patrolling arrangements after 2020 have been disturbed. So we've been able to sort out much of the disengagement, the friction points, but some of the patrolling issues need to be resolved. But once we deal with the disengagement, there is the larger issue, which is both of us have brought very large number of troops up to the border. So there is what we call the de-escalation issue.
And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in the United States and is representing India at the 79th General Debate Session of United Nations General Assembly, on the sidelines of which he is meeting foreign ministers of various countries. The minister met his Guyanese counterpart, Hilton Todd, during which he asserted that the bilateral partnership between both nations has been steadily progressing in various dimensions. The leaders look forward to its further growth. Jaishankar also held a good conversation with Cyprus counterpart Konstantinos Kombos. The talks focused on ongoing developments in West Asia and their larger implications. The two leaders also discussed taking our bilateral cooperation forward. He also met Moldovan Foreign Minister Mihai Popsoi. They discussed the potential for cooperation in investment, education and tourism. Jaishankar and Popsoi also exchanged views on the Ukraine conflict. EAM also met his dear friend, European Union Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra. Jaishankar appreciated his support for deepening India-EU partnership. External Affairs Minister also met his Bolivian counterpart, Celinda Sosa Lunda. Both sides talked about advancing bilateral cooperation. Earlier, EAM also met Spanish counterpart Jose Manuel Alvarez. They talked about bilateral cooperation as well as on Ukraine and West Asia. While India has called for increasing international cooperation to fight the synthetic drug trade, which has been used by the terrorists against the country. Speaking at the summit of the Global Coalition to address synthetic drug threats posted by U.S. President Joe Biden, Jaishankar called for enhanced operational cooperation, intelligence sharing and stronger law enforcement collaboration to combat the synthetic drug trade. India has long been affected by the nexus between terrorist groups and narco-trafficking. Cross-border rackets smuggle drugs into our territory, which proceeds supporting terrorism. Synthetic drugs include fentanyl, methamphetamine, Catapagon and MDMA, which are often more potent and more lethal than plant-based drugs like cocaine or heroin, according to the coalition. J&K said that India, as co-chair of Working Group 1, has taken a proactive stance and has focused on preventing the illicit manufacture and trafficking of synthetic drugs. Finally, he expressed confidence that collective resolve and cooperation of India and the US will build a safer, drug-free world for all. And India's game-changer initiative, Make in India, has completed 10 years today, transforming country into a global manufacturing powerhouse. From space to semiconductors, from electronics to electric vehicles, Make in India has become a reality today. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal said that before the launch of the initiative, the mobile imports of the country in 2014-2015 were rupees 48,609 crore, which reduced to 7,665 crore rupees in 2023-24. He, however, added that under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, manufacturing jobs in the country grew by 200% from 2022 to 2024. He also said that 99% of mobile phones in the country are now made in India. The development of the past decade proves that Make in India has become a national force, paving the way for India to emerge as a global manufacturing hub. Well, Antyodaya Diwas is observed every year on September 25th, which commemorates the birth anniversary of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay, the key proponent of integral humanism and the founder of Bharatiya Jan Sangh. Upadhyay's philosophy of Antyodaya continued to inspire social welfare initiatives globally, emphasizing the importance of addressing the needs of marginalized communities. More in front.
Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay, who considered nation building and social service as the goal of his life, set an example of simplicity, honesty, and inspiration. He was not just a politician, but also a thinker, philosopher, and author of high repute. He envisioned a powerful and balanced developed nation, introducing the world to progressive ideologies like integral humanism. Deen Dayal Upadhyay was a pioneer in providing a rational direction to Indian politics and economic thinking. Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay was born on 25th September 1916 in the village of Nagla Chandrabhan in Mathura, Uttar Pradesh. After completing his education in Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, he dedicated his life to nation building and public service. He played a vital role in establishing the Bharatiya Jan Sangh, leading to a significant impact on the country's political landscape. Throughout his life, Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay advocated for integrity in politics, staying away from electoral politics until the circumstances led him to contest the polls in 1963. Despite facing challenges, he never compromised his ideals. Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay's demise on February 11, 1968 at the Mughal Sarai railway station, amidst suspicious circumstances, left behind a legacy of principled politics and vision centered on human welfare. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, the Indian Meteorological Department has warned about extremely heavy rainfall expected in Maharashtra, coastal and north interior Karnataka and Goa for the next few days. The Met Department has forecasted heavy to very heavy rainfall in coastal and interior Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh and Vidarbha today. Isolated severe downpours are predicted in Goa, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Konkan from September 24th to September 26th. Gujarat region may witness the same weather on 25th of September and 26th of September, whereas Marathwada will get it on the 24th of September. Kutch and Saurashtra are likely to receive it from 24th to 28th of September. IMD also said that a low pressure area has formed over west central Bay of Bengal and adjoining northwest Bay of North Andhra and South Odisha coast under the influence of cyclonic circulation. And still to come on DD India News Hour. 9th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank to be held in Uzbekistan. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to attend the meeting. Harry Brooks shines with maiden ODI 100 as England beats Australia by 46 runs. And we'll also show you some glimpses of China's Sichuan, the home of pandas.
geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Pakshi Kuranan. On to some business news now. China's central bank on Wednesday slashed another key interest rate a day after it unveiled a raft of new measures aimed at boosting its ailing economy. The medium-term lending facility, the interest for one-year loans to financial institutions, was cut from 2.3% to 2.0%. The rate was last lowered in July. On Tuesday, Beijing announced a slate of support measures, including rate cuts, mortgage requirement easing, and fresh funding for equity purchases. Despite the aggressive measures, the Chinese economy is yet to achieve post-pandemic recovery and a set goal of 5% growth in 2024. And basking in the afterglow of the announcements, China and Hong Kong stocks soared for the second day on Wednesday. In early trade, China's blue chip CS1300 index and the Shanghai Composite Index gained more than 2% each. Hong Kong benchmark Hang Seng jumped 3%, while Hang Seng Tech Index surged more than 3%. Experts say markets rally could continue to bring market higher over the next few sessions. Earlier, U.S. stocks too closed high on Tuesday, riding on China's announcement, shrugging off weak consumer confidence data. High-end came after the indexes initially trimmed gains after a report from the conference board revealed an unexpected decline in U.S. consumer confidence in September. The S&P 500 gained 0.25%, while the Nasdaq Composite gained 0.56%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.2%. Weekly jobless claims and personal consumption expenditure data remain in focus this week. And India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will attend the 9th annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank today in Tashkent in Uzbekistan, ahead of which the minister met the Minister of Investments, Industry and Trade of Uzbekistan. India is the second largest shareholder of the AIIB. The multilateral discussions will be centered around a broad spectrum of important global issues relevant to the developmental agenda. FM Sitharaman will also sign the bilateral investment treaty between India and Uzbekistan. The treaty aims to promote more extensive economic cooperation for the mutual benefit of both countries on a long-term basis. As part of a 5-day visit, Sitharaman is expected to call on Uzbek president, besides holding bilateral meetings with the counterparts and interacting with the Indian diaspora. Well, Thailand Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra said the government will press ahead and fulfill its promise to increase the minimum wage to 400 baht a day nationally within this year. Further, Shinawatra added that it will be considered after the opinions of all stakeholders and legal compliance. Earlier, Labour Permanent Secretary Pairoj Chotikasatayan hinted that the 400 baht new minimum wage, which was scheduled to become effective from the 1st of October, may have to be postponed. The tripartite wage committee is yet to decide on the issue after 2 meetings of the panel were called off due to the lack of a quorum. Meanwhile, the private sector has expressed concerns that the wage rise will hurt businesses. And amid high expectations, the International Monetary Fund Executive Board is all set to consider Pakistan's 37-month extended fund facility arrangement of about $7 billion on Wednesday. The agreement reached on July 12th was subject to approval by the AIIB as England beat Australia by 46 runs on the basis of DLS method in the third ODI at the Riverside Ground in Chester Street. After being asked to bat first, the Aussies put up a healthy score of 304 for 7 on the board, but it was a partnership of 84 runs between Steve Smith and Cameron Green that steadied the ship. Batting at third, Smith scored 60 runs off 82 balls with 5 hours before Jofra Archer accounted for his wicket. With the win, Australia's 14-match winning streak in ODIs has also ended. England made it 1-2 and kept their hopes alive of winning the 5-match series after rain halted play with their score at 254 for 4 while chasing 305. And Indian captain Harmanpreet Kaur is quite confident with the Indian squad at her disposal ahead of the Women's T20 World Cup 2024 because of the experience they bring. With confidence in their team, Kaur and head coach Amol Mazumdar were measured with their words. Here's a report.
Ahead of the Women's T20 World Cup 2024, Indian captain Harmanpreet Kaur has expressed confidence with the Indian squad at her disposal for the marquee tournament because of the experience that they bring. As many as 12 of the India's 15 squad members have prior experience of playing the tournament. Only Shriyanka Patil, Asha Shobna and S. Sajana are making their first appearances at a World Cup, having come through eye-catching performances in the Women's Premier League. Speaking at the pre-departure press conference in Mumbai, Harmanpreet said that they are going with the best team possible.
Yeah, definitely, because if I talk about this team, we have few players who played, who've been playing for a longer time and they know their roles really well. And yeah, I'm quite confident with this team and I can say that, yeah, this is the best team we are going for T20 World Cup.
India played T20s against Australia, England, South Africa and Bangladesh apart from the Asia Cup in the lead-up to the T20 World Cup. While they lost the series against England and Australia each by a 2-1 margin, they won 5-0 in Bangladesh and tied the series against South Africa 1-1 after one game was washed out. The surprise result, however, came at the Asia Cup where Sri Lanka beat them in the final to win their maiden title. Head coach Amol Mazumdar said the camps were designed with a focus on specifics and that the lack of game time should not hamper India at the World Cup. So far, the seasoned coach has walked the talk by focusing on the fitness and fielding aspects of the team, and things have been no different leading up to the T20 World Cup as well.
We had a fitness camp which happened at the NCA and fitness and fielding camp that was specifically done for those two areas where the skills weren't touched. But later on, we had a 10-day skill camp where, only skills and we played matches. So we identified certain things and we tried to deliver that.
India finished runners-up at the T20 World Cup in 2020 and lost in the semi-finals in 2018 and 2023. They also narrowly lost the gold medal to Australia at the inaugural Commonwealth Games in 2022. For Harmanpreet, it will be her 9th T20 World Cup, having played in every edition since the inaugural one in 2009. And she is determined to win India their maiden T20 World Cup. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, double Olympic medalist shuttler PV Sindhu will have South Korean great Lee Yoon-hil as her consulting coach on interim basis as she bolstered her coaching team ahead of her anticipated return to action next month. The move came after the recent appointment of Anup Sridhar as Sindhu's interim coach. The duo will be in Sindhu's coaching team until December 2024. A decision on a permanent coaching team is expected by that time. Yoon, too, is a former world number 1 and Sindhu's teammate during the Premier Badminton League. He brings vast international experience and a reputation for meticulous preparation. He's also a 2006 World Championship bronze medalist in singles and has 2 Asian Games team gold medals in 2002 and 2014. Sindhu is expected to return to competitive action at the Finland Open and Denmark Open, both in October. And now let's take you to China, where tourists from around the globe are flocking in to see these adorable pandas in Sichuan province, the home of the giant panda. 2 of them will soon get a new home in Hong Kong Zoo. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.